Hi everyone, it looks like we're about to start. Thank you so much that so many of you have turned up. I'm sure there were a few late nights and possibly sore heads. I'm sure lots of you went to bed nice and early, specifically for this keynote, of course. So yeah, very briefly, I'm just the person asking the questions. I'm Will Freeman, a freelance games journalist, do a few other bits and bobs in the games industry. Of course, we're here to listen to the Media Molecule team, who you might notice some of them are surrounding me at the moment. I made it sound like you're being intimidating, they're not. We're actually really lucky to have this many of the senior team here. We, speaking before, can't remember the last time all these guys were on stage
together. I don't
think
we've ever been on stage together.
Never.
And also, I don't think we've ever actually talked to each other all up together. It's been for about a year. Hello. So hi. We should do let's just have a company meeting and you guys can just listen in.
Yeah, that's the format we're taking. Let's start by just kicking things off by giving a warm welcome to the Media Molecule team. Excellent. So, we will start, just to save you hearing my voice for too long, just by getting you guys to do very brief intros to your time and role at Media Molecule. I think you've all been there about the same amount of time, and maybe a little on your role and dreams. So, Siobhan, we'll start with you.
My name is Siobhan, and I'm the studio director, so I'm like the cat herder, I suppose, is my job. I sort of try to make sure that we eventually finish, and that when we do, basically it's like people, product, process is kind of how I divide my role. But yeah, I'm a producer by trade, basically. I write post-it notes.
Much more, you do much more. I'm Kareem Ettouney. I'm the art director in a company of art directors.
I'm David Smith, technical director, one of two.
Yeah. And I'm the other technical director. Dave actually plays games, so he handles everything to do with fun and
like how things move.
How things move, and I do the pictures. So that's how it splits up, and the sound.
I'm Mark. I'm the creative director, which translates as chief miserable bastard, basically. There you go. I occasionally get grumpy about stuff in the hope that it all might change something. So.
There you go, succinct summary of your career. Something I forgot to mention, there's going to be a little window at the end if you want to ask any questions. So, don't be shy. If I can get up here and do this, then you can ask a question, certainly. We'll do that at the end. I guess we'll start. Hopefully, most of you in the audience have a vague impression of what Dreams is. I admit, when I first came across it, I kind of assumed it might be roughly in the tradition of Little Big Planet, that there's a game with a significant creative element. I'm not sure how many of you have played the early access. Having a tinker with it, it's really interesting where it sits on the spectrum between it's not really a game engine, it's not really a game, it's not really both at the same time. Well, that's to me. So to you guys, this is my convoluted way of asking, what is Dreams? But does anybody want to go with...
Go on, Mark.
What is Dreams?
Yeah,
where does it sit on the spectrum?
Referencing your spectrum, I like to think that it's kind of covers the whole spectrum, actually.
Right, okay.
As in, it is a game engine. It's essentially a platform for games. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is, we give you all of the tools to make those games. So it's a set of creative tools that let you make games, and if you don't want to make games, you can just play the stuff that other people have made. And it's not just games, actually. It's music, film, sculpture, painting, digital stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really know how people would use it, and I think that's watching the early access, and if anyone has tried it, it's a very weird experience in a good way, but I don't think there's any other, we have a big TV now in the office where people just sit and dream surf, as we slightly pretentiously call it, and play random stuff and experience things. Every now and then you hear squeals of laughter or shock or awe or occasionally derision, and but it's that experience of just sort of almost like a YouTube rabbit hole. I don't really know how to describe it, and so
social network of creativity.
There you go.
There you go.
We're figuring it out. My point was, and I think this is true of anyone who's a game dev in the audience, you start your project and you have a picture in your head of what it might be, and then by the time you've shipped it, it's just evolved into something completely different, and then it's in the hands of the players, and they latch onto, or the reviewers, or the press might latch onto elements of it that you thought were completely secondary. And so for us with Dreams, especially because it was weird to begin with, we really didn't know what it would be when it was out. And it's still surprising us a bit, I think.
I mean, even the way you interact with it compared to a traditional game engine, you know, I guess the kind of more familiar mouse and keyboard and timeline and editing, I almost felt like I was creating I felt like I was playing creating rather than using. I just wondered, like, just for the audience that haven't spent time with it, just a little clarification on, it's so distinct the way people interact with it. I wonder how you guys sort of understand or frame that, because it's not a traditional piece of software.
It started, tools that are both creative and playful have started centuries ago with things like musical instruments.
Right, okay, yeah.
Where you have the same tool used to design a song is the same tool used to perform a song, and it's also therapeutic and expressive. So the digital medium and creative tools didn't have these associations. They were designed more for the capability of the machine and trying to go in the grain of that, and not really inspired by user expressivity being on the foreground. While games, because their genesis is about feeling good. So all the controllers and the input devices are meant to be picked up and make someone feel powerful and playful and control a plane or control a person or a ball. So it's all very designed and geared for fun. And to take these input devices and controllers as our starting point took us in that performance direction, that musical analogy.
Yeah, that's a
one
really
of the
interesting
things
analogy.
Sorry, to interject with that is the fact that you're moving between the disciplines was one of the things that makes it really special, because I don't think people would approach games development in that way. Like when you're making a game, it involves music and animation and text and sound and things, logic and all the different elements. But the idea of the tool was that you'd be in this one place and you could move fluidly between them. So you could be making music and then move into animation. And I think that's been really fascinating to see how the community used that. And it's made it, it's just almost birthed all these, you know, little random hybrids, which I think is really kind of core to the experience.
I definitely found myself kind of tinkering as much as I did going in a set direction.
Yeah, tinkering's a good word.
Right, okay, you can have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I guess your games kind of famously have, in different ways, always, you know, kind of fostering creativity or encouraging creativity, and the player has always been a part of that. You've talked before about creative gaming and demystifying the creative process. Like, why does that matter to you guys or interest you guys? Someone told me, Mark, you're starting the Commodore 64, might have something to do.
Oh, does anyone in here remember a Commodore 64? I don't know. Oh, there's a couple of old people in here. Yeah, so that was my first love, if you like. And the thing that I loved about that was you took it home, you turned it on, and it says ready. And you could start programming if you had a book or something, and you could make things on it, which I would argue was probably the birth of the games industry, actually. And then sort of fast forward a little bit, we get to the PlayStation 1, which I excitedly went out and bought, took it home, and I'm like, how on earth do I make stuff for this then? And I was a bit disappointed, actually, although it did come with a disc with some really crude version of BASIC on it. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And I actually sat down and made a Space Invaders and that. I thought, well, this is rubbish. And so for me, I guess that was the seed of it, because for me, you know, computers, I always associate with being able to make stuff for it. And so it's, obviously you can make stuff for consoles, and it's getting easier, but it still probably involves, you know, getting some other software and getting it to talk to the computer and blah, blah, blah. It's still quite technical, really, so it's all about bringing that back to the kid in the bedroom and just start making something, really.
I was more of a Lego person, but then, you know, my dad got me this for my ZX Spectrum. I didn't have a Commodore, I had a Spectrum, come on. But I had this little interface thing on the back that allowed me to plug it into my Lego models and make the Lego models come to life. And so there was a sort of bridge from Lego to Spectrum to PC and to demo scene and then games. But for me, the thing is that people, to head you off before you ask this question, sometimes people say, like, is Dreams competing with Unity or Unreal or all these other tools? And I think the thing is that, like, as game developers, all of you, we're all shaped by the tools we use, like, as in our literal creative processes or the game ideas we have or the visual ideas we have are, even subconsciously, even though we don't want to, filtered through whatever medium we choose to be using. So if you're using Lego, you tend to think in a Lego-ish way. If you're using Unity, I would claim that you think in a Unity-ish way, and that's not a negative thing at all.
Well, you're not going to make Doom on a guitar, are you?
No, exactly. Well, actually, guitar, you know, Doom's got some pretty good guitar music in it. There's a great talk about his guitar pedal board and stuff, but anyway. My point was basically that Dreams and Unity and all those other things can coexist, and for me, the thing that excited, when I sort of came back from paternity leave to start Dreams 8 years ago, and you were talking about a sketchbook, and Kareem was talking about sculpting and the immediacy of being in a sort of, what you didn't use this word, but flow state, like being in the zone, and you're just creating. And I was so jealous that the tools that I had as a wannabe musician and as a game maker were so clunky and all rooted in the same roots, like Unity, Unreal, the editors that will be built for LBP internally, 3D Studio, Maya, they're all rooted in the same set of kind of metaphors of like viewports and inspectors and all of that shit, which is wonderful and awesome, and again, not a criticism, but it means that everyone in the entire games industry is filtering their creativity through the same set of ideas. And one of the big things we wanted to do with Dreams is like, what if game editors kind of took a left turn 10 years ago and went in a different direction, and then they can both coexist, because it means you can go into Dreams, and we see this in our own studio. Game makers who are very experienced game developers make different stuff when they use Dreams, because the metaphors that they're playing with and the fluidity between disciplines that Siobhan was talking about just puts you in a different mindset. You can tinker in a different way.
But it's like you were saying with the tinkering, you can kind of make something without thinking about what you're going to make in the first place. You can just kind of dive in and make it up as you go along, essentially, whereas with traditional polygon modeling, for example, you normally need to plan it out a little bit more beforehand.
And that's why I think there's always going to be room for weird shit. I love, it's like indie people making games in a different way. And I think it comes to people as well, the diversity of, I'm excited by the fact that when I follow there's a Made in Dreams hashtag on Twitter, and the demographic of the people posting on that is very different from the demographic of the game developers I typically follow. So I'm actually really excited that the diversity of people making in Dreams or who are drawn to it is different from a normal game development and probably reflects the world a bit more. Like, as there are more women, there's people from different backgrounds, and that also influences what's created. So you get this anyway. So these are the sort of things that I'm sort of.
There's a lot of craft. Is crafty the right word? Crafty people in the office.
Right.
Like Dave, for example. You know, he's brilliantly technical computer programmer, etc. But he spends a lot of time making all these really cool wooden sculptures and crochet things. And Kareem has always got a paintbrush in his hand, for example. You know, so a lot of that is what shapes our tools, I think, as well.
Right. Okay. And Dave, you were about to say something on.
I was just going to say that it's almost. When I look at, because people say, why do you make Dreams? What's it about? And of course, there are 1,000 answers to that question. But in a way, the answer to me seems kind of obvious, that we love to make games. Mm-hmm. We want to give people experiences that they will enjoy. We enjoy the experience of making games. So perhaps if we can give people the experience of making games, then that's a really genuine thing we can do. It's something that we deeply love enough that we spend our lives doing it. So being able to empower more people to do that just feels like they're very kind of natural. There's no more justification is needed than that.
Right, yeah. Sorry, I keep looking over to this side. I don't know, I mean, the paintbrush in hand, you come from a more traditional art?
I sort of background in design and traditional art. But yeah, it's creativity, and you were asking about creative gaming and that sort of word. And we believe that creativity is a human right. It's not an exclusive thing. And it's not harder or easier than language that we learn and speak. And you know, if you invest in it, you will speak it. It's also not always fun. It's painful. as well. And it's a good kind of pain for people to go through as well. We share, like Dave was saying, you know, we like making games, but we also endure in the process and grow, and it's a good thing to share. I think empowerment was a concept that was very dear to you, Siobhan, when we first started, and it's very related to creative culture that we have in Media Molecule and the projects that we do.
Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's really awesome to actually, like, LBP was the first taste of, throughout development, people would say to us, oh, you know, do you actually think anybody's going to create? And we'd be like, yes, we hope so. And then we watched as that happened. And so with Dreams, I think we had a belief that that would happen. But I sometimes sit at home and look at the things on my TV screen and think, what? Like, how is someone making this on their couch? Like, some person that we've never met before has actually used the thing that we have made to express something that was deep within them. And I find that just deeply rewarding. And I love making the kinds of games that we make because it's just really energizing to see people sharing their creativity. It's just awesome. So yeah, I love it because I just love it.
It's a microcosm of the games industry as a whole. Like, you know, you can get inspired by looking for Screenshot Saturday or whatever, and see what everyone is doing in their bedrooms around the world making games, and that can be inspiring or intimidating. Sometimes you see something really good and you're like, fuck, it's so good. I can't possibly compete. But then you kind of come back from that and you're like, actually, I can do something interesting. And I think that Dreams, you see all of those same dynamics, and as Kareem was saying, the pain of like the emotional curve of making any project. You know, everyone goes through that dark bit where you're on, you know, you feel like you're on your own and your demons are eating your soul, and your ideas are all rubbish and nothing's coming together. And we see that in the Dreams as well. It's like,
but then you see the community like geeing each other up and helping each other, or that very human thing like we would have on the team as well, where like, you know, we're a reflection of the community in a way. Like the Media Molecule team is the first Dreams community. And as I think Alex was saying, like we see the people in the studio and make things quite different in their spare time to what we all make together. And you know, the process of making Dreams has been one that like has challenged us all. But as a team, I think, you know, we've really, the reward is like it is worth it, because you actually see a community burst that didn't exist before. Like 12 weeks ago, this community didn't exist, and 12 weeks later, we have people who are now, you know, illustrators who are paper illustrators who are now making the characters are in 3D and have got like dozens of games made with their characters. Like it's just, I think that's, that side of it I think is really, you know, when we talk about new voices coming into the industry, Dreams will really, I hope, and I think we're seeing already, it is bringing in these new voices, and they're all sorts of ages. They're young, they're middle-aged, and they're small kids, and then there's like grandparents who are making games with their grandkids. And I think we used to talk about parent and child, and I love that it's now grandparent and grandchild. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating that, yeah, sort of, I don't know, I guess bringing people without the preconception or experience of being game developers can kind of shake things up. I also wanted to, you know, playing through especially the tutorial elements, and I realized, wow, this could even introduce someone who's not really played games before, but it's a pretty complex and capable tool. How did you hit that balance of creating something capable? And I mean, to me, it's almost more impressive that you've managed to introduce it to people, and the tutorials, I mean, it's not more impressive, the Dreams is more impressive, but the way you bring people into the game, or creativity can be pretty intimidating, right? How did you approach that?
It's hard.
By spending the best part of 10 years on it.
Right, right. On to the next question.
There you go, next question.
No, I think also shout out to the tutorial team.
Yeah, is Richard still here? Richard was here. I think he had to
Richard,
go.
Frank, who's actually in the audience.
Yeah. There he is.
We made tutorials a bunch of times, and I'll tell you a little story from the tutorials. We released an internal Sony and friends and family only thing, and I think we gave it to Shuhei Shida, who I think was there.
There, yeah,
Hello,
behind you.
Shuhei.
Always
And
behind you,
he
Alex.
hated the tutorials and loathed it. He didn't say that, but it was very obvious.
No, he
that
did. He said
yeah.
they
Hands
were
will
not
come
fun.
out now.
Yeah, we had telemetry and
We
stuff.
had already fixed them by then, though. It just wasn't in the
We were
alpha.
watching you, Shu, and we knew you didn't play through the tutorials. But no, he didn't like them. And we didn't really realize how to present the information directly to answer your question. Over that period of 8 years, there was a mixture of the inward-looking stuff of like, we made tools that sucked. And I want to mention something about Kareem in a second. I'm going to hold that thought for a second. But,
about me.
but the tutorials failed and weren't great until, I'm going to give Richard the credit, but it was actually a team around Richard as well, who remade them in a much more narrative and playful way. And bringing that playfulness into the tutorials wasn't easy and took us 2 or 3 attempts.
And that has to be partnered with user testing. Like, you know, the user testing team within PlayStation really helped us. I mean, we went through, I think it was about 30 rounds with them. Like, it was a lot of rounds. And they weren't all like mega rounds, but we were definitely helped along that journey to just make sure that everything that we thought we were doing to help people was helping.
And the other half of your question was, how do you get something deep and also easy sort of vibe?
Yeah.
And I think Kareem was always the champion of that from the beginning of Dreams more than anyone else, and was resistant to, I was constantly wanting to add, for example, texturing. As a graphics person, I was just like, it was obvious to me that we would have marble in there. And, you know, I'd send screenshots of it with texturing in, and Kareem would just basically blank me or ghost me or say no directly. And I don't know if you can talk, Kareem, about that practice.
So I think you need the right to reply to that.
Yeah. No, the thing is, there is a lot of schools of thought in how do you demystify and welcome the new beginner. And there's a whole range of things that add up to achieve that. The good education, the good teaching is one end. A good teacher can make miracles, you know, and can also give you complexities that torture you for your life. But in terms of tool design, I believe in absolute design, which is that there is no beginner tool and advanced tool. You don't have a piano for children and a piano for Chopin. You don't have a pencil for child and a pencil for Michelangelo. You only have different knowledge, but you don't have different tools. I think different tools is snobby and patronizing. It's kind of like the children toys which you press a button and it plays a melody. That is not appealing, and that is not actually demystifying. That's idiotic. The kids like the challenge. Give the kid the crayon, and they draw with it. The adults are afraid of drawing, not the kids. The good tools are good and deep and powerful, and I think trying to kind of like guarantee success in a tool design isn't a good idea. It's good to fail, because when you fail, you go through the cycles, you think while you rise again, you repeat and repeat and repeat. So to try to kind of make something that does only successful marks is actually something that makes us homogeneous and not unique.
And it's actually interesting in games, because games is all about success. It's about, like, you know, and I think that's what's actually been really excellent about the work that's been done on the tools, is that they feel nice to use. So you have that moment where you can get lost in them. I think you've just done such an amazing job with, like, the tools creation, because it just, as someone who doesn't use them every day, the fact that I can get lost in them and have that playful experience, and the tutorials give me enough, like, you're doing good stuff to help keep going, I think is really important, because you don't want to dumb it down.
No,
you know, and that's been a really core part of the whole thing. Is
And yeah,
to
that's
dumb it down.
what's so impressive. It doesn't feel dumbed down. For you, that musical instrument analogy you made earlier is most fitting to me, because I'd keep accidentally using the word play to talk about, I was playing it when I kind of meant using it, but maybe that's where my own confusion about, is this a game or because the tool and... Yeah.
You want to repeat. The thing is, in the biggest word used in music rehearsals is another take, another time, because it doesn't feel like, oh my God, You know, to play the piano again, it's still a piano, you know, so it's still the nicest way to make the sound. So it's nicer to play the whole thing again. It's almost better than just tweaking an error in one area of it, which is the culture of digital design, which is, still has a place. Like, undo is the greatest idea in software, and it makes you go back in time and stuff. Copy-paste is another one. You don't have to draw it again. And we keep these ideas, you know, we steal these ideas. But in if you make a tool that makes it nice to do it again, and even better and more flavored, what you don't want is a tool that'll do kind of tool, where you just about got something to work, and you're not going to try again, even though you don't like the result, but the process was so tedious that you go, that'll do. You know.
I think I'm right in saying there's a philosophy that the best way to teach kids is through play, for example, so you don't even realize that you're learning. And the kind of box that we wanted to tick with each of the key areas, i.e., you know, sculpture, music, animation, was that there is depth there, but very quickly and with very little effort, you can get some kind of result. So there's that playful thing, and then hopefully that tempts you to sort of get more and more curious and learn more and more. So
It seems that reference to Lego you made
Yeah,
is
and,
actually quite fitting.
and I think this idea that failure is important, you know, that happens internally and externally. So for example, Dreams is 8 years, and in that process we made maybe Dreams 1, Dreams 2, and then Dreams 3, and the thing that we're calling early access is still unfinished and still patchy, and some elements work well and some elements work okay, and some, you know, you guys can judge what you think works and what doesn't work. But I feel like we've shipped Dreams 3 now, and that 1 and 2 just weren't good enough, and that thankfully, you know, there he is again, let us have the time to completely go down the wrong path. Like, we didn't know what Dreams was, and when you asked at the opening of this talk, what is Dreams? You know, what is game development? How should you game develop? And you know, here we are, we can answer it. But
some of the best ideas come from making mistakes, I think.
Yeah.
So
and then user testing to find out what resonates with people, which I think is like everyone out there, like, do get your mates and randoms to play the game, because it's never what you expect, like the reaction.
I think in terms of like where it started out though, the framework was always there. Like, we tend to start LBP, Tearaway, Dreams, kind of started with a fairly strong design framework of what the ambition is. It's just how to get there. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, if you even go back to like the first things we pitched, it's amazing how on point it is to what we ended up shipping.
Yeah.
Like, and that part of it, I think, is like, it's not just that we're kind of underselling the fact. It's not just this random journey.
No, it's not random.
It's more that it's like, I think the framework is there. Every time we did have to present to the like Shu and Michael, we were showing our journey to that framework. That never really changed, that we stayed steadfast on. And I think it was really lucky that I think they knew better than us that this is really ambitious, and we sort of almost sometimes felt that we would get there a bit sooner than we...
Well, I think it's being bold to throw away the middle scale stuff. So sometimes when you're game developing, you're so is it investment bias? You've made something, you've worked on it for a month or 2 months, and you can't throw it away now because you've poured all of this like time and money and effort into it. And the thing that we've sort of had the luxury and luck to do is, I think it's like next coffee and goal. So Siobhan is saying we've always known the goal, and we're actually sound chaotic, but we've always wanted to make this. We've very clearly known what Dreams was in a sort of grand vision sense, and we've known the immediate. We've always had a build that's playable. So the next coffee's visible to me, and the goal is visible to me. But the sort of middle term, we kept messing up, and we kept driving off into the wrong turn, you know, and then it's just like you have to do a U-turn, backtrack, and try again. And that's the process by which maybe you have better ways where you can sort of just get there in the...
I knew exactly what Dream needed to be.
Yeah.
And it's almost there.
Yeah.
But the thing that we don't know is what people will make.
Yeah.
That we'll never know, and we don't want to know. Like, you know, but I know exactly that I want to make a pen. I just don't know what people will draw. This is the thing that you have to be humble in. Like, you know, when you mix media with social network and you get phenomena like the internet or the YouTube or something where you can learn subgenres. But what we wanted to do in Dream and the flavors of creation and the styles, I remember Dave, for example, had in mind a very, very particular way of rewarding every user. Maybe you can talk about that one, because that's a baby, that was very crystal in your mind.
I mean, the work isn't finished yet, so it's hard to talk about. But the basic idea is that rewarding cooperation, that's, you know, it's part of what lets us make the things we make is that we work as a team.
Okay.
So it would be really nice in Dreams, and we've seen this work where people are working in large teams of sort of not necessarily actively working together, but sort of passively taking things from each other. And there's some Dreams out there where there's at least 100 people that were involved. And I think that number will grow and grow. So it's really important to us to find ways of really rewarding all these people where you don't need to be the person with the big vision of some enormous game or some big movie. You can just like making teacups, or you like doing lighting, or there's some bit of the creative process you enjoy. And it's kind of exciting if, again, that bit that makes that collaboration fun and rewarding and challenging at times, we can kind of give that to the community and really, but go even bigger, that, you know, our community can make things that are better than we can make because there's so many of them. And finding ways that we can really kind of reward and make that feel justified, make it feel that you can go into Dreams, you can just do that one thing you love. You don't need to do everything else, you can do this one sort of narrow fields that you just enjoy doing, and you can spend thousands of hours doing that, and that's enough.
I think we actually designed that in, so when you look at how creators in general create, you go through that phase of being possessive, so you know, you're in your band and then you're finally starting to make good songs, and now suddenly you suddenly got like, you get the IP rage, you're like, you know, this is mine, and you see with game developers as well, you've got like, I'm going to stop people from seeing the source code, and I'm going to make this thing, and it's going to be amazing, and you get paranoid that people are going to steal your ideas. And then as you get older and grumpier, you realize that actually no one's going to steal your ideas.
Gets worse.
That's the, is it the Woody Allen line? That ideas are like assholes, you know, everyone's got one. And no one's going to steal your idea. You're just, and so then you get the sort of open source vibe of like, you can see all my stuff, and what makes my stuff valuable is actually that I'm bothering to make it, and that no one else is going to bother to make it. So for Dreams, we were like, we're going to try and get people to skip that annoying possessive middle phase, like where the defaults are share, the defaults are pushing you. Dreams constantly pushes you to collaborate, and then, as Dave says, eventually we will have successfully closed the reward loop of like, not only does it push you to share, but you also then get the endorphin rush of, I made a fence, and now the fence is in the middle of 5 billion dreams, and you feel super good. And we've seen little seeds of that happen, like Fence Guy is a thing, like that happened on Twitter. He said, the learning curve of Dreams is super hard, I hate it, I've thrown my control away, all I can make is this fence. And he just posted a screenshot of a shit fence. And everyone used the fence.
That was a good, well, it was clearly a good fence then.
And it was a good fence. And then he was like, oh my God, I've never had this. And he literally, it was a new emotion. I know I might be extrapolating slightly from reality. I've never met the person.
Never done that before.
Yeah, this person who I've never met, clearly I know that he had a divine experience. And he's like, creativity. But I do think that we were, even if that story didn't actually happen, it will happen. The fence bit did.
The fence bit did definitely happen.
I want Dreams to be that, give people that feeling of reaching an audience and sharing and creating, blah, blah, blah. And I think sometimes game development can feel very isolating in a shed. And Dreams is trying to emphasize the communal aspect, like the going to the develop and getting drunk together aspect, but in PlayStation 4 form. Yeah, I don't know what.
I think
You all know where to get your fences for your next game, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Sure, well, I wanted to direct the next question to you, well, although it's for everyone to discuss, but about, you know, the team have been, you guys have talked before about how how involved the team are, how much agency the team have. You know, anybody who's played the early access, when you boot up the game, the team are among the first things, the team in the studio are some of the first things you see. And of course, any game could be deemed to be a result of the efforts of the individuals that make up the team, but there's something else going on, or it's slightly different. How have you approached that?
We've always really celebrated the team. I mean, any game made by a team is made by a team. I guess at we've always really wanted to put the team, make that you know, everything that's on the screen is a product of everybody in the studio, very much. But I guess like one of the things that's interesting is last week when I was at the Young Game Designers Awards, the person I was talking to there was talking to me about us as a director team, and I hadn't really thought about that for a little while.
As I say, we haven't been together for ages, so yeah.
Yeah, but we work together like in and out of each other's pockets, like every day in different ways. It might not be that we sit down every day together as the five of us, but I think like actually there was a trend, you know, we all came from studios where there was like one person who was the sort of pinnacle person. I was at Criterion, these guys were at Lionhead, and there was a trend sort of post that probably in like the 2006, 2007 era with more studios having more multi-headed like companies. And I think one of the things that does at Media Molecule is like it adds a very strong flavor of, you know, each of us have very different takes on things, but we have what I think is actually a really lucky overlap in what finished looks like. And we have a very, I think, an overlap in the fact that we do really want the studio to feel like somewhere that the team is celebrated. We all know that like everybody that comes in every day is making a choice to be at Media Molecule, and we're lucky to have them. And one of the worst things that you can feel when you're making a game is that or you're making anything, or you're working probably anywhere, is that your efforts are undervalued. And I think that that's one of the things, like, and I'm not saying we actually get that right all the time, by the way, like we screw up like every company screws up. But I think that I'm really, really happy that one of the things that we never argue about, we might argue about lots of things, but one thing we never argue about is like ensuring that the team is treated well, treated fairly, like that we, you know, and we might argue with each other about something that's happened, but I think that we really do our best as a group to make sure that like, you know, so that's why they're there, front and center. The first thing you need to see is that Dreams is made by all of those people, and without every single one of them, it wouldn't exist. And to the point where like the tools, sorry to ramble on, but the tools themselves, like you know, I think of something like the audio tools, for example. You know, that audio team were involved, like Ed and Todd and Tom and Bogdan, and were involved in a granular way that I don't think that they were ever involved in the same way in LBP. On the art side, it was like the art team all the way down has been involved, and obviously headed by Kareem and by Alex and by the people, but it's like, I feel like we've had to really draw on the resources of everybody in the studio to make this happen, and to make sure the tools do the things that they want as professionals as well as playful. So it's.
I don't know how everyone scales teams. So, you know, you talk about these Ubisoft 1,000 person teams, which are incredible to me. I remember a friend of mine who's an engine programmer, and he was like, I love the fact that when I commit a change to my engine code, it will affect 1,000 artists overnight. And that model
that
is...
can backfire sometimes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to take the stress, I think, of that. So instead, I think of Media Molecule very much as a sort of, I'm trying to recreate Bullfrog, I think, as in, because that was the first creative environment I experienced as a sort of teenager intern character. And I just was in awe of this place, of Bullfrog. Mark, you were a bit more senior, so you probably saw the dark side of it, I don't know. But I just...
No, I've got good memories.
I saw Bullfrog as this wonderful collective of people, and it owned that way of working, naturally celebrated everyone. Although Peter was the figurehead, he was very good at nurturing and letting people have creative control and input and stuff. And actually, I remember at the time, he was frustrated that he was perceived as the only person that the press wanted to talk to, you know. And he would often say, like, talk to the team. But for whatever reason, it's hard to talk about a team. We're on this stage, not everyone at Media Molecule. So what I think is interesting about the audio team, for example, though, is that when you're organizing a studio, I find that each subgroup, we call them molecules, Valve calls them cabals, you'll always have overlapping sub-teams, right? And it makes sure they do overlap, make sure they're cross-discipline. Don't just have your programmers and your artists. Don't do it that way. Do it as like features. So we have the audio molecule, which is not what it sounds like, but all of the elements from code and design and audio and what it sounds like, blah, blah, blah. They're a fiery bunch. I'm part of that. And we have these raging email conversations where you think a murder is going to happen. And Ed will just say to the audio director, Tom, will be like, you're wrong, blah, 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 blah. And he can say that, and that conversation can happen. And then I'm the grumpy coder who comes in and goes, ah. And I'm like, you're all not even thinking, do your homework, blah, blah. And then, meanwhile, in another part of the studio, there's another molecule with some of the same people in it, say the Dreamiverse team, or which have a completely different dynamic, or the server team, who have a completely different dynamic. These are ones that I'm aware of. There are other teams, the art team, the design team.
Yeah.
And again, they're overlapping clientele, but they have completely different day-to-day existences. And I think that that is really important as well. It's not just about the individuals feeling empowered. It's also allowing little groups with their own personality to form. And the audio style wouldn't work in the art team because there would be a murder. I don't know, but I do find that when you're organizing a group of creative people, you have to allow kind of dynamics to form, and then you have to...
Yeah, you have to almost be like, I think you have to allow the chaos to be bubbling to a certain degree at any point, and not try to have one way, because it just wouldn't, like in the production world, I feel like if you tried to make one way work at MM in particular, you just lose that magic. It would just be, which makes production's job a bit harder, but it's...
we invest a lot of time making these things.
Yeah.
So you want people to care about what they're doing. And if you can get your own express your own ideas and things, you're going to care about it more. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah.
Good ideas are good ideas. It doesn't matter where they come from. So,
like Siobhan was saying as well, I think the key to Media Molecule style is the fact that it has 5 directors, very unlikely to agree at any point in time. Maybe it will happen. But the good thing is that the whole company has become that. And the culture, the fact that all of us are hands-on as well, most of the time we spend programming or making stuff, and the idea becomes, or the culture becomes, well, if you want your idea to prevail, you need to make it. You need to do it. If I need to convince these guys, I need to persuade them, I need to inspire them, I need to pitch, I need to present. So it becomes, that's the vibe of the place. It's a place which has a lot of competing solutions.
And I think that's maybe one of the dark sides, actually, to admit to a sort of, because I think sometimes you have to win an argument by proof. You can get into these fights, and this is true not in any company, I'm sure, where you're like idea A versus idea B, and you're never going to win it with words. One of you is going to win, one's going to lose, and in the end, the ones where the resolution is happy is where someone has been able to prove it with a prototype or an image or something which is tangible, because then the other person could admit and say, oh, actually, that's what I meant, and you misunderstood my words, but now I can see something,
yeah.
Then blah, blah, blah. So Mark would always be like, I could do this on a C64, that was your line. He would always be, like with Little Big Planet, we had this raging debate about should Sackboy face the player and sidestep along, or should Sackboy be in profile? And Mark was like, it's not even that complicated. That's what you sound like. Oh, I can do it on a C64. And then you did do it on a C64, didn't you? You coded it.
No, I did. I think I did a prototype in Unity or something. I can't remember actually.
No, it was in Ragdoll Kung Fu.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, he did something rubbish, but it was.
It proved the point, though.
It proved the point, and suddenly we realized we were having the wrong debate. We were having this like 2 camps, front versus side, and then he did this demo where basically it would face you when it was stationary, and then when you ran it went sideways, and it's obvious, yeah. But I think so the dark side of having to prove things by doing is that if you're not one of those slightly extroverted creative people, then it's very hard at Media Molecule because you're not going to win battles. So I'm sure that other people on the team could come on the stage and be like, let me tell you about the dark times.
Yeah.
But I do think that Media Molecule cherishes people who are able to prove their idea, which I think limits us in terms of who we can work with, and it works out net positive. But I just wanted to say that sometimes if you're someone whose ideas are verbal, then you're going to have a tougher time convincing someone. And for those people, I think you need to go and find a champion. I sometimes say to people,
I think that's where it's like, you know, the different teams have different dynamics, because we've definitely, if I think about the content team, you know, Dreams has been this. As soon as Dreams got to the point where Steve Big Guns could make his gameplay, like a lot of it, he was able to actually show Mark and Dave and Kareem what he was wanting to say. And he's one of the people who wouldn't be one who'd get up in a meeting and go, this is my grand vision for how this is going to feel.
that's what
You just grip the controller really strong.
Yeah, but
Steve Big Guns,
Steve
Big Guns, that's his PSN name, and we all call him Steve Big Guns. We hired him from the Little Big Planet community, and he's massive and has big guns. And but he's super quiet. He doesn't speak basically, and but he has the greatest gameplay ability, making ability in the studio. So he has to do it by, and if you whistle near him, he gets so raged, he gets so angry that he breaks controllers, and IT have to like seriously give him lots and lots of controllers because I whistle a lot. Sorry, Steve, but Abby as well. She can't cope. Anyway, the point is that he's someone who just proves by doing, and that's crucial to the culture. I don't know what even.
No, I can't remember what else. No, I like the idea you were talking about so often. The kind of senior people are the ones on stage. Maybe next time we'll get the whole Media Molecule team.
Yeah, let's
I
do
mean,
that.
if I can interview 5 of you, right? Then all of them. I'm sure Susan's at the back. You're up for that, right? 100 people on stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I will hand over to you guys in a moment, but just as a last one, you'd mentioned kind of the length you guys have been making this game. You know, I'm sure to some people that would be enviable. I'm sure to you guys perhaps it feels like the appropriate amount of time needed. But how, you know, I guess just from the practicalities of keeping momentum, how have you found the experience of kind of managing the development or following the development of a game for that length of time?
Like, it has been staged. So, like, the one thing to say is, like, the whole team hasn't been working on Dreams for that whole length.
Yeah, we did.
So we made Tearaway, and Tearaway unfolded in that time also. So there was a very small team with these guys on it that was working on it from that period to 2015, so 4 years. Very
Was it really that long, was it? Well,
Yep, and then it was from 2015 to January, like 2016 to now that the whole team's been on it. So it hasn't been like, when we talk about it, sometimes it sounds like all of Media Molecule was on it for that time, and I think that would have been really challenging. But yeah, I mean, Dave, do you want to, whatever you want to?
I mean, I mean, when you consider what we've actually put in there, you know, we have got a full 3D sculpting package, a full digital audio workstation, you've got programming language, a publishing platform, social network. There's quite a lot of things in there. So really, considering we're still a relatively small team, that's actually, I think we've pulled it in quite quick, actually.
Yeah, well, that's almost why I was cautious about describing it as a long time.
But it was,
because for what relative to what the project is,
but
right?
obviously, it was a ridiculously ambitious project. We have, you know, have to give props to Sony really, just for giving us that much rope.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of publishers that would have.
Perhaps touched too much. Maybe they should have just. You know,
Maybe, I don't know.
Who
I mean,
knows?
Well, I think that there's a different world where we could have released Dreams a few years ago, and it would have been a very incomplete sort of alpha-y thing that we didn't really quite believe in. There's a different world where we could have been pushed to do that. And we could have, I think 2 years ago, we could have got something out, but it wouldn't be this. So I think, in a way, this is like Dreams 3 or Dreams 4 that we're releasing. It's gone through so many iterations that it feels like we've gone through a cycle of multiple projects.
I think also sort of finding new collaborations. So shout out to young graduates. Like, my new thing is in terms of hiring, all the best hires at Media Molecule, and there's different people from different backgrounds. This is a little bit reductive, so sorry to anyone who isn't this at Media Molecule. But some of the best hires have been young graduates, first job type of people. You know, Bogdan and Liam, for example. Bogdan is pivotal in how the audio tools are. Liam is essentially the lead game programmer with Dave. And there was a moment in Dreams 2 years ago, as Dave was saying, where we had a really good version of Dreams that was creating great content. And for the first time, this is like end of 2015, beginning of 2016, we had a version of Dreams where the team was making playable content that was fun and enjoyable, and like we're like, oh, home straight, ship it, like done. And I did my valedictory talk at SIGGRAPH where it was called Learning from Failure, and the implication was we'd now succeeded. Yeah, it's like that's instant karma, I think, is what that was. But the thing was, shortly after that, we realized that we were in a few dead ends, and the game was not very fun to create with. It was the content that we were making was good, but the act of creation wasn't yet what Kareem had envisaged, you know, in the vision of and Mark of making it actually enjoyable to be on the journey of creation and not just the end result. Anyway, point is, I sat down with, I had a dark moment of game development, and I was talking to Siobhan, and I was like, what do we do? And Dave was like, come on, Alex, we're nearly there, just put your boots on, shovel some shit, get the rubbish out, and we'll put this out the door. And they were right, and there's a journey we could have gone on. I think Dave was being too self-deprecating. I think Dreams could have been good if we'd shipped that version. But it would have been a different Dreams from the one we did.
And I think the big thing was, like, shipping a service means we've got to be happy with the technical foundations.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of it, is like, there's all the R&D and then getting the design right and all of that stuff, and then there's...
So I felt we'd technically painted ourselves into this awkward corner, and I sat down with a young graduate called Liam, who's, is he BAFTA somebody or other now? He's really good, Liam. And we remade the game. We remade the foundations of the game by pair programming for about 3 months from nothing. We went file, new project, and we rebuilt Dreams from scratch. But because he was a different personality to me and had a different experience and different outlook, we were able to very rapidly, and learning from the Dreams that we had to the side, you know, we had this working game that was about to ship that Dave was like, come on, clean it up, lads. And I was like, well, if we rebuild it, what will happen? And we did it with a different approach, my point is. We did it with a different set of people very briefly. This is the structure Siobhan was talking about. And so through those 8 years, the structure of the team changed radically. And then the structure of the code changed radically. And then we all came together for the last couple of years, 3 years almost, to ship it. So it's been this, it's not 8 years block, it's like 2 years of this, 2 years of that, 2 years of that, 2 years of that, and now hopefully 2 years of, well, 2+ years of another that. I don't know what that will be though.
Right, I did promise our dear audience some question time, and the clock is ticking. I also spent far too much time worrying about not having enough questions, and it turned out I had three too many.
I think we're showing a trailer first. Yeah,
Oh.
and just so people know that the creations in this trailer are actually all made by the community, for the most part, anyway. So there you go.
Should we get out of the way?
No, it's high. Violence.
Actually, that was...
Yeah, I mean, you saw it with your own eyes, but as you start playing with Dreams, it is absolutely absurd, the possibilities within it. I am still only at the phase of just randomly playing with everything, because there's so much incredible to do. Yeah, we should have time for a couple of questions, so if you shoot your hands up, I will try and... Excellent. Matt, at the front. I do know you all by name.
Hey, thanks for the panel, really interesting. So Dreams obviously has some common ground with your previous work, but you are doing this early access phase this time, which is sort of similar to kind of testing your might do in the past. But I wondered, are you doing that because of something specific to what Dreams is, or is this something you kind of wish was around in the days of Little Big Planet?
I mean, we did it because it was a great way, like, in some respects, Dreams is kind of lopsided. Lots of the game was ready and kind of needed an audience to really test it out and give us the feedback, and we're really hungry for it. So we sort of felt like a lot of it was ready. And we almost needed to iterate the Dreamiverse with a live audience. So it actually was Sony who suggested it to us, because we were sort of in this phase where we were like, this bit's ready and this bit needs more time. And I think their view, some of their view was like, if we're waiting for this lopsided project to become, all even, you're just going to be working on it forever. So in some respects, it helped us birth it and get it out. And that's just been amazing. So yeah, it's been it was an idea that came out of the fact that, we were sort of ready to get it out. And I think that the community over the last 12 weeks, and the work we've actually been able to do since it's been, 12 weeks, yeah. But since it's been live, all of our work on it has really changed. We've actually been able to iterate it. So it was very new to us, and it was a bit of a leap of faith in a way, and but I think it's actually worked out in terms of helping us understand what it is even more. So it's been.
I mean, I don't know if you can generalize across games. I think LBP was probably a bit less lopsided, so maybe it didn't need it, but then in retrospect, I think it would have been interesting to try it. And I think other games could benefit from early access in that, whether you call it early access. I know Steam has early access and everything, but like certainly getting out to an audience has been really helpful for us. So yeah, I think I didn't think I wanted it at the time of LBP, but I probably would.
Oh yeah, I think Little Big Planet would have really benefited from it.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah,
we need to time machine, go back and tell ourselves.
Maybe remember, so Little Big Planet, we often said it was play, create, share, but really it was. Little Big Planet, it was really play, create. The share side was.
Yeah.
Was like often a bit the weakest, and that's the one that needs more testing in a real environment with like lots of people using it. So I think, in hindsight, it would have been great to have. Gone down that route. But with Dreams, we're really seeing the value of that.
I'll never forget, I think it was the Burnout Paradise team, so around the time of LBP, they released, they had a DLC plan. I'm now speaking for a team that I didn't work on, so I don't know exactly. But they had a DLC plan planned, and then they shipped the game, and then completely ripped up their DLC plan, and then made a different one based on what resonated with the players. And essentially, if they had done an early access, they would have got an early sneak peek of what they could focus their development on. And I think that quite often games come out and everyone assumes on the outside world that it was a kind of coherent vision from the beginning. And it isn't. It's a kind of smorgasbord of ideas that made it past the finish line, and then there were some that didn't, that are held back for the next patch or whatever. And sometimes you realize that you were betting on the wrong horses internally, and that when it comes out, you're like, oh, well, that's completely not resonated. That darling there that I was going to, bet my house on is rubbish, and no one cares about it. So just kill that one. Pretend I never thought of it. So
maybe you could argue that Little Big Planet 1 was like early access.
For Dreams.
And Little Big Planet 2 was the more finished project.
That's a bit messy.
we did the beta for LBP happened once we had gone beta. So it was just really lucky that as we watched those levels get posted, that it actually did work, because we were pressing through the process, because at that stage it was still burner Blu-ray.
There's a sort of a game development moment as well, which is that when it happened on Dreams and it happened on LBP1, where we did a private beta and the creations on it were rubbish. I mean, really rubbish. And for LBP, we had no idea what UGC would become. So we were like, oh God. And I was like, someone made a cardboard Death Star that came down and some confetti, and Sackboy went, woo. And I was like, yes, it's amazing, kind of geeing myself up that was the peak of what LBP would be. And then it went out to real gamers, and within a day, there were levels that were competing with what we were doing internally at Media Molecule. And the same thing happened on Dreams, and I remember the team looking at the beta results for the internal beta, being a bit deflated and being like, oh God, Dreams is too hard. The best creations in the internal beta were a car that falls over and the wheels don't work. I don't remember what it was, but it was a bit shit. And then the real beta comes out with real humans, and within days they're doing amazing stuff. So the lesson I've learned is your you're all tired and you're all knackered and you're all bored of working on the game. So your internal beta is basically irrelevant, and you have to do the real beta with real humans to get a sense of.
We've probably got about 5 to 10 seconds left, but does anybody want to? I did the person with the person with their hand up in the room. I think there's only one. We'll have to make that the last one, I'm afraid. It's Matt's fault for asking such a good question.
Hi, guys.
You're banned.
I just had a thought watching the trailer video. If someone creates a really brilliant, hyper-casual game within Dreams, and somebody else then clones it for mobile to great commercial success, how does that work in terms of copyright?
Well, we have our lawyer. We have our lawyer right here.
On the spot.
Yeah, it's complicated.
I can sidestep that one by saying it really is, I mentioned earlier, it's a game development in microcosm form, and rip-offs are going to happen. And I suppose you can...
well, IP law is IP law. So.
Yeah, IP law is IP law. But what I mean is also humans are humans. There'll be
Looking
Gucci
at Mo
t-shirts and there'll be rip-off Gucci t-shirts. So one of the things that, again, happened on LBP, I don't want to talk about what will happen with Dreams, but I know that what happened on LBP, for example, was that we got a bug report, which is that my famous level has been cloned within LBP. Not quite your question, but close enough. And there's a bug that they must have found a way to steal the contents of my level, and I investigated it and blah, blah, blah. And it was a true knockoff. I think there's an amazing word for it in Chinese, I forget what it is, but there's a culture in China where it's less of a stigmatized thing that you can... Knockoff has such negative connotations, whereas there it's seen as something where it's like, oh, you've taken a successful idea and you've put your own spin on it. And this person had basically recreated it. Now you can judge, whether that person was an arsehole or not to do a knockoff. But it was a genuine knockoff. It wasn't a bug. It wasn't a technical bug. They had literally spent hours and hours and hours recreating this successful level, possibly slightly better than the original. And will that happen in Dreams? Yes. Does that happen in mobile? Yes. Does that happen in games on Steam? I saw one on Twitter this morning, someone had an open source game and it was put up on Steam by somebody. And it's like, oh, come on, that's a bit rough. And you can do takedowns, and we have a legal department and a moderation team, and so I think I can't predict the future, and maybe something will happen and we'll take something down, or the moderation team will get involved, or you could invoke IP, blah, blah, blah.
I think it's fair to say that we are bringing new challenges to the legal team. And luckily, they are absolutely brilliant. And people always say to us, oh, the legal team must be really hard to work with. And I just want to give a big shout out to the Sony legal team, because they have been absolutely amazing. We love them. And actually, they just want to do everything to help us and basically help the community flourish. So anytime we have these sorts of questions, we have a Slack group where we're basically like, what do you think about this? And so along that journey, we're working very closely with that team to basically just figure all of this out, because it's all very new. So
we'll have to wrap it up. So
okay.
go on.
I just wanted to answer your question, or I think the question that I think you're actually asking. And I'm not going to look at the lawyer because he's going to give me death stares. But we've got an ambition to legitimise it as a genuine game dev platform, essentially, which is we've got to do right, but the ambition is that people can actually, eventually kind of monetize their stuff somehow. Don't quote me on that.
Yep.
Nice one. Yeah, well, we will wrap it there. I'll be selling my counterfeit Dreams merchandise from a trestle table at the back. But no, seriously, let's have a round of applause. Thanks for the questions. Thanks to these guys.